Great to see the diversity in the chat. Hi, everyone. Okay, so I think we can start. So hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Alive Learning Forum session. I'm Rasha Fadlallah, and I'm a faculty member and a health policy and systems researcher at the American University of Beirut in Lebanon. I work at the interface between evidence synthesis, knowledge translation, and evidence-informed policy making. And I also have the pleasure of serving as co-chair of the Alive Learning Forum. It's actually wonderful seeing a large number of colleagues joining from across regions and time zone. And really this demonstrates the interest and the importance of the topic we will be covering for today. So thank you everyone for taking the time to join us today. Can we move to the next slide, please? Yeah, so for those joining us for the first time, the Alive Learning Forum is a global learning space where we exchange innovations, practical strategies, and real-world experiences to strengthen living evidence systems and partnerships. Together, we seek to build more timely, collaborative, and equitable approaches to evidence generation and use. So for today's session, we will be covering enablers for living evidence, a focus on AI. It goes without saying that AI is everywhere today, and in many ways, it is the new buzzword. But our goal for today's session is not just to explore what AI can do, but also how it can support responsible, transparent, and sustainable living evidence systems. We will move from practical examples in climate and health to system-level innovations in global public health. And as part of those practical examples, we will be exposed to a variety of AI tools, and we will also ground the discussion in what's working, what's challenging, and how we can move forward responsibly together. Next slide, please. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome our three outstanding speakers for today. So we have Thiago Rocha, who is Senior Advisor for Data Science, Health Analysis, Metrics, and Evidence at PAHO WHO. We also have Maria Pontes, who is the lead of Alive Climate Evidence Partnership. And we have Jan Minx, who is the head of Evidence for Climate Solutions Working Group, Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research. Welcome to all three speakers, and thank you for joining us today. So in terms of the session flow, we actually have an exciting session for today. So we will begin with 3 short presentations, each around 6 to 7 minutes. So we will start with Maria, who will introduce the Destiny project, which is a global collaboration building AI-powered tools to accelerate and optimize evidence synthesis for decision-making. And once she introduces Destiny, she will also zoom into the role of Alive, outlining how Alive is integrating AI into living evidence workflows. Next, Jan will highlight and deep dive into the methodological and AI innovation side. And this includes existing AI tools, models, supporting living evidence, what are some of the key challenges and implications moving forward. We will then zoom out to a systems level example where Thiago will show how AI-driven horizon scanning and automated evidence pipelines in global health can support living proactive decision-making at scale. Together, while these 3 different sessions bring in different domains and perspectives, they are all anchored in building trustworthy, sustainable living evidence systems. So once we hear from our presenters, we will then go into a moderated session where we can deep dive into some of the key emerging themes, followed by audience question and answers. Just a quick housekeeping rule to make the session a success. So Certainly the session is recorded and it will be shared with you online. Please keep your mic off until you are invited to unmute, but we certainly invite you to post your questions and share any conversation in the chat along the way. And if you would like to listen to this in other language, then we have the worldly translation. So it's a link that you can click and select the language that you would like for the interpretation. Can we go to the next slide on the worldly? So for those who would like to access the link. Yes, so it's at the top right corner of your screen. Okay, wonderful. So before we start with our speakers, just to get us warmed up, I want to do a quick check-in. So in one word, when you hear AI and evidence, what comes to mind? So drop your word in the chat, anything that comes to mind: excited, curious, cautious, overwhelmed. So in one word. Ethics, cautious, harness, excellent, trustworthiness, efficiency. So we already see interest, cautious, trust, optimism in the room. And I think this mix really reflects where the field is right now. It is hopeful, but thoughtful about how we do this responsibly. So with that energy, let us begin. So I will first turn to our first speaker. So Maria, over to you.
Thank you, Rasha. Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. You will forgive me if I have to unmute, as I have a cough typical of this season in Europe. So apologies in advance. Could we go to the slides, please? I cannot see my slides just yet.
I think we might have understood that you will like share your screen, but I think we have them as backup. Like, is that right, Precious? You have it there, like, if you continue.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Shall I share my screens?
If you don't mind, that could be maybe easier. If you
Yeah.
have them handy there, yeah, thanks
Yeah.
for that.
Apologies.
Sorry.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. All right. I'll start then. So I will introduce you to Destiny, the Living Evidence for Climate and Health Global Project, and I'll talk a little bit how we are working in partnership, how we are applying the Alive approach. And then I'll pass on the word to Jan, who is actually the PI for the project, to go much more into detail around the AI side of things. So Destiny stands for Digital Evidence Synthesis Tool Innovation, Yielding Improvements in Climate and Health. It's quite the title. But what the project really is doing is co-developing a new generation of digital evidence synthesis tools, so powered by AI, and really trying to showcase the transformational power for the delivery of rigorous living evidence in climate and health. And this is done through specific evidence synthesis products that apply these digital evidence synthesis tools, trying to answer questions that really matter to policymakers and other evidence users. So the aim is really to develop this generation of digital evidence tools, to make them then available to be used by other research fields, but at the same time really test and apply them to living evidence synthesis projects. It's a wonderful consortium of various organizations bringing together both climate and health expertise, as this is the focus of the project, as well as evidence synthesis, and we have Cochrane and Campbell there. We also have a few African-based organizations working on synthesis that really bring kind of the low resource communities constraints live to the project and help us ensure inclusivity and equity in the work we do. So you have there Acres based in Uganda, eBase based in Cameroon, and Ascend in Cape Town. In terms of the work that Destiny is doing, so as I mentioned, it's about developing these new digital evidence synthesis tools using AI to create faster, cheaper, and more useful evidence synthesis tools, but really without compromising on the rigor of the evidence. So that's really core to the project. We also want to ensure safe and responsible tools applications without compromising on standards, and so evaluation is a big part of the project. As I've mentioned, we are also working through co-production to develop specific evidence synthesis projects, and we're working with decision makers to apply these digital evidence synthesis tools in key cases, which I'll describe a little bit later on, and really ensure that the living evidence synthesis products are user-driven, responding to relevant questions that policymakers as well as practitioners are really struggling with. And then finally, it's around mainstreaming these tools, helping users, producers, and funders establish best practice, and hopefully, as I said, trying to ensure or enable that these tools can be used in other research fields as well. We use the ALIVE model of co-producing tests for living evidence. And so we use quite the iterative model to identify with policy and practice the needs, then really scoping what the current gaps or evidence synthesis needs are, trying to identify what technological developments are needed to meet these decision makers' needs to address problems such as a never-growing body of research, for example, and how AI can actually help us do that process much quicker and efficiently. And then really trying to understand what's important for these decision makers, as well as was reflected in the chat just now. And then, as Rasha said, there's the perceptions and perspectives on the AI use on evidence synthesis is quite broad. And we actually have encountered people in the field, in these communities of practice we organize, that have not used AI at all, or hold quite mistrust of these tools. But we also have encountered people both on the evidence synthesis production side, as well as those kind of advising government or practice, that feel quite excited about the possibilities that AI could bring to the field, especially, as I said, to ensure that it's easier for them to respond to very evolving questions, especially in the field of climate, for example, but also dealing with growing numbers of research and evidence, and also to deal with quite a lot of constraints, which are both in low resource communities as well as in more developed countries, around resource and how much time and people can actually be dedicated to these projects. So we use this model. We have organized communities of practice to do this iterative conversation with those in the project working on both the tests, digital evidence synthesis tools, as well as the production of the evidence products, and facilitate that conversation to ensure there's a good response, and that we keep things living and responsive to needs. And we organize these communities of practice around the 6 impact cases, as we call them, in the Destiny project. And you can see them there. The first 2 are really mapping exercises, and Jan will go through the global map for you to have a sense of what it looks like. And it's really a global repository and map of all climate health research, the first of its kind. And the second one, it's also a mapping trying to really localize the evidence. The impact cases 3, 4, and 5 are systematic reviews focusing on various topics relevant in the field of climate and health. And then the impact case 6, we call it the radical automation. It's working together with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals Synthesis Coalition, trying to really support the acceleration of the SDGs. We are still discussing as we speak what the scope of that will be. So I'll leave it there and perhaps pass to Jan so that he can demonstrate what is being done around AI application.
Thank you, Maria. Let me quickly share my screen as well. Hello, everybody. Yeah, my name is Jan. Thanks for the invitation. I hope that you can see this. I will not talk about all the things that we are trying to do within Destiny, which is a 4-year project, and so rather focusing on some of the things that we've been working on so far, and that's this global living evidence map in the field of climate and health. So the motivation for this work is that we've all seen many evidence gap maps, right? They are very, very useful for us, but they are also usually only used once, and then they are often outdated. They are also tend to be very specific, and so it's something where we thought there's a nice thing where recent developments in AI may be able to help us to produce something that is that we don't then throw away, but rather do something that's a bit more sustainable and can be reused. And it's, of course, that's why we're here living. So what's this map about? It's the map about all kind of evidence in the field of climate and health. So it's a part, it considers the climate literature and the health literature, but it's specifically about the intersection between those fields. So when evidence is talking about climate and health in combination. What I want to do during this talk is, in terms of the technical side of things, to talk about 2 groups of creatures that we've generated. One is the robots. Robots are really helpful to do repetitive tasks for us in the context of evidence synthesis, and that's what they are really useful for. And so we've built robots, but we are also in the process of developing agents, and the agents are supposed to help the users to actually get quicker or to support the user while interacting with the data and creating their piece of evidence synthesis within the platform. So in terms of what we do in this mapping exercise, we do what you always do with a map. So you start with a question and the protocol, you do a literature search. What's a bit different here is that we are screening an entire field. So we have a million pieces of evidence that we consider, that we take from bibliographic databases, so OpenAlex, but we also use the Web of Science, Dimensions, and Scopus. We will add gray literature to that. That's still work that is ongoing, and we to search these databases, we use a broad string about climate, weather, and health outcomes, terms related to this. We have a lot of training data, so that we can use for classifying research. So we have about over 20,000 pieces of hand-labeled evidence that we can train on. We train on title, abstracts, and keywords at this stage, and then in this way sift out from those 1 million records the ones that are relevant to us with an inclusion classifier, or actually we do this in 2 stages. One with a supervised classifier that we train, and then in the second stage we use an LLM to increase a little bit to get rid of some of the false positives. Then we extract information from this. So we classify the data further, whether it's this piece of evidence about mitigation, adaptations, or impacts. And we have a we have developed a detailed typology for the field of climate and health, containing all sorts of things. I will talk about this, about more than 500 classes, and we extract the locations. Once we do this, there are analytical stages, how you can look at the data, and we publish this on an interactive website. And this entire pipeline is basically automated through machine learning routines that are interconnected. This is kind of how this is another way how you can look at this. So we have this living evidence repository that continuously calls new abstract, new records, initially from OpenAlex, and then we gap fill that. We get the abstracts. If the abstracts is missing, we get the full text, and we duplicate obviously also these records, and then we enhance the data. We extract this information that is of interest to us around the taxonomies, and then use those classifications to enhance it and give it back to the repository, where it's then more useful because you can much more easily find stuff. It's kind of the idea. This is now a first version that we've not built as an interface for use, but just to test some of the visualizations, but it gives you a broad kind of status of where we are. This is still from June, so now it's the numbers have changed. So we considered at that point 1.4 million records, did more than 6 million enhancement, etc. And you can then all of these records of the 100,000 that we in the end include, we make sure that they are then enhanced in terms of all those classes from our typology. And here you can see what these are. These are interventions, I call this climate policy instruments. And these are contexts like sectors, geographies. These are obviously health outcomes, but also climate drivers, extreme events, etc., etc. And you can all use this to find some of the results, and then you can, whatever you do, you can select records via search, and you can then display it in different ways. This is not the interface how it will look like. It's just for testing some visualization or some options of presenting data with users. How do we want to go from here? This is what we call the early demonstrator in terms of where we develop the concept. We want to include gray literature. All gray literature is probably a bit too ambitious, but a lot of gray literature should be added. Also multi-language, which we haven't done. We need to deal with what I would call fuzzy boundaries. So there's a lot of climate relevant research that doesn't talk about climate. We want to have those as well. And this is actually also true on the health side. And in a future world, we want this map to be expansive. So there's, for example, if you are interested in climate change and malaria, you may then in the end also be interested in traditional malaria treatment and what we know about this. So you want to expand the map into the field of health in this case. How we envision this to look like in the future, and this is what we are now working on, is that we want to have something like a bot agent that helps you. It works like a map builder that helps you to actually formalize the map that you want to do, and in this way provide very seamless access to climate and health evidence, including visualization. So the idea here is that we don't need a map, but we just need a big repository and a map builder that allows people to create the maps that they need and that is up to date in really short amounts of time. And this concept of agents there is important to help people to build rigorous evidence synthesis processes. This is roughly where we want to go, and I leave it there. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jan and Maria, for sharing your insights. And this is really exciting and inspiring. We will now move to Thiago's, where he will demonstrate the use of AI in a different space. So we move into the global public health space. And I'm aware of time. So Thiago, if we can keep it to 5 minutes, that would be really great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And my name is Thiago Rocha. I'm currently the Regional Advisor for Data Science and the Pan American Health Organization. I'll try to cover in 5 minutes. Well, so what we're doing using AI to support global health and innovation challenge. Basically, we have multiple dimensions regarding AI. So the most common and widely known recently is the generative AI, but we have different scopes in terms of this. And depending on the type of the problem that you have in terms of forecasting analysis, you may have different solutions regarding the AI domains that will be suitable to produce the best outcomes for you. What we are doing with this, basically, we are integrating generative AI models, especially large language models, with tools, what is called an AI agent, to do and to support us in terms of horizon scanning initiatives. What we are doing. We have critical delays, and pandemic taught us that we need to, as long as possible, be ahead of what is coming in terms of innovation and interventions for diseases. And by integrating AI solutions to this, we're trying to use different data sources. WHO currently has one of the largest open repository of clinical trials. Basically, every single drug that was used for a disease came from studies regarding clinical trials. And we are integrating different parts of information to see what new treatments are coming for the diseases that are challenges for the countries that we are supporting. And by doing this, we are cross-referencing the information regarding the trials with drug availability, with the regulatory agencies, and with the categorization that these agencies apply to the drugs that are part of studies for development of new interventions for the disease. Basically, we are using this for 5 steps. So we are getting information from the drugs repository, clinical trials, and regulatory agency in a step that we call it data ingestion. We are using AI to enrich this information so we can attach to this raw data ontologies, standardizations, filling gaps using fine-tuned large language models. Integrating this part into a fusion layer where we have like this information converted into a database that can be accessed by large language models, and using this to support the outputs that is dedicated to highlight what new drugs are coming for one specific intervention, for one specific disease. As is right now, we are able to implement this workflow. So basically, starting from one disease of interest, you are able to extract information from the clinical trials, deduplicate information, integrate this with drugs. So you can standardize the information of a clinical trials with data sources that are internationally recognized as reference to standardized information. And using this, combining this, merging this information with the regulatory agencies and highlighting for one specific disease of interest, what are the new treatments and what are the new drugs that are coming. I will not enter into the details regarding the AI agents, but Basically, our idea is to have a solution that was AI-based, that someone with no coding skill or no technical knowledge in terms of systematic review or so on can just ask what he wants. I would like to know what is available in terms of non-small cell lung cancer, stage 3 immunotherapy trials, and the agents will implement everything that is related to this workflow and generate an output highlighting the new molecules, who are the key players that are developing this, who are the sponsors that are supporting this type of research, gaps, innovation trajectories, trial registries, regulatory database, and scientific literature related to this into a comprehensive report. This is just a screenshot of what we are getting in terms of output. So from the universe of drugs related to colorectal cancer, we are able to identify, depending of the type of the cancer, these drugs. We are able to apply a categorization to prioritize the drugs that are considered as innovations. And from the drugs that we are considered as innovation, we have all the details in terms of the classification, the use, the trial phase, when the drug is approved by the different regulatory agencies, and other characteristics that are useful for anyone interested in identifying what is common in terms of new treatments for disease. 5 minutes, it's a short amount of time to enter into all the details, but basically what we're trying to do is to identify research and equity gaps, promote strong collaboration between countries and agencies, adopt a data-driven resource allocation, use research and development intelligence for support global initiatives dedicated to health challenges, and reduce the detection time between emerging innovation and the incorporation of these technologies in the clinical setting. Thank you.
Thank you, Thiago, and apologies for allocating only 5 minutes for the presentation. So I would like to thank all three of you for the fascinating and insightful presentations. And I'm sure the audience agrees as well. So together you've painted a really powerful picture of what the future of evidence synthesis and decision-making can look like. But you also reinforced both the promise and the complexity of harnessing AI when it comes to the space of living evidence. So we will now move into a short panel discussion, or what I like to call the lightning panel discussion, where I would like to delve into some of the key emerging themes from the presentation. And I would like to organize the panel discussion around 3 areas. So if we can start with the reality check and then move into the issue around rigor and trust, and then finally close with building the future. So what's next? Okay, so we're going to start with the reality check. And in the meantime, I think we have a poll. I don't know if we can launch it for our participants. So where are you currently using or testing AI in living evidence? So moving back to round 1 on reality check. So I will start with what I opened my speech. So AI is really everywhere. But when we zoom into the living evidence, where is it really delivering real value, and where does hype still outpace reality? So what are some misconceptions we need to clear up as soon as possible? So I know you've presented about the use of AI from different perspectives. So based on your experience, what would you say, what is working well, what is missing, where are the hypes, and what are some misconceptions we need to clear up when it comes to AI in living evidence space? This is open to any of the panelists. And certainly, if we can keep the answers short to 1 minute max. Jan, please.
Yeah, I mean, I would say what works well now from traditional evidence synthesis perspective, I think on the mapping, I think part of the reason is that I think we can have acceptable we can accept lower standards for including, for example, some false positives, which as long as the big picture is still okay. I think reality check also means that there's, as you say, a lot of hype. So I think we are still in the period of Wild West, where there are a lot of tools out there that claim a lot of things, and those tools are not evaluated. And this is what we are learning all the time. that stuff is not reproducible, and that these evaluations, rigorous evaluations, that this works is also not there yet. And the human in the loop processes that are really critical, I think we have them. We know how they work, but I think they need to be worked much deeper into the evidence synthesis process, so that we can actually always make sure that, not the tool works on average, but that it works on the very data that we are currently interested in.
Thank you, Ran, for raising this important point about the validation. So I'm also part of ESIC, which is the Evidence Synthesis Infrastructure Collaborative working group around AI, and the issue of the lack of a global standardized framework for validation is a key hindrance when it comes to scaling AI use in decisions, so in evidence, living evidence. So note well taken. Thiago, would you like to add to what Jan said?
Yeah, so I think what is currently happening that we can see concrete result is that AI is speeding up, it's increasing the speed that we are able to compile information and aggregate data that used to consume a lot of effort. So especially when on our side, when we are working with horizontal scanning, do everything to cover one specific matter over the literature, extracting information, systemizing, create an ontology to categorize this. This is a laborious task that AI is actually being able to kind of speed up this process with quality. But I agree with Jan, there is a lot that needs to be done so we can assure and guarantee that every single result, especially the ones using agents, are replicable. Because you have autonomous decisions that was done by the machines, and we need to keep a track of these when we are dealing with scientific evidence, because we need to be sure that we are sharing information that is accurate and that is sustained and supported by the scientific evidence that we are using as a reference. So there is a lot to be done. So we may reach a point that we can get more replicable results and more reliable results when we are doing and applying AI solutions, but we are in the process, and the speed that the things are changing and how the models and the solutions are improving is really overwhelming. But if I need to highlight 2 points, I will mention this too. Thank you.
No, thank you, Thiago, for emphasizing the importance of rigor, and this translates nicely into our second round, which is around rigor and trust. So as we've heard from all of you, AI has really huge potential, but it also has risks related to bias, traceability, hallucination, misuse, etc. And we all know that if evidence wants to make impact, people need to trust it. So this brings us to the question of responsible use of AI. So building on your perspectives and experience, how can we ensure, or how do we ensure AI-enabled evidence remains transparent, reproducible, and trustworthy, which are the principles of traditional systematic and evidence synthesis? So how can we safeguard these when we move into more integration of AI into the living evidence workstream? Any reflection from the panelists? Would anyone? Yes, Jan?
Yeah, I can start again. I think it was Julian Elliott here from Alive who said that for the first time. I mean, AI is kind of the current technological frontier, and I think, but we are very optimistic that it will enable a lot of things. But I think the real frontier that we are, or the next frontier, and I think that's the important one, we need to look at is trust. And I think that's why also the evidence synthesis community need to take their place in this kind of in this process and do what they are good in. And that is basically making sure that things are rigorous. I think we also need to be pragmatic, because we need there are many players in this field at the moment, and I think if we want to make an impact, then we also need to be sufficiently fast. I think the risk here is really that a lot of products that claim a lot of things will actually turn out not to be able to do that, to do what they promise, and I think that will undermine trust. And I think so that also requires us to be swift in this and pragmatic, but at the same time hold up the methodological standard that I think has made the community strong. And so I think that's in my mind like a complicated question where we need to strike a good balance.
No, thanks, Jan, for this intervention. And so if we want to dig a deeper to make it more practical for our audience and for people engaging in evidence synthesis, so you have been doing excellent work at Destiny, and you just shared the Living Evidence Repository. Thiago is doing amazing work around global public health. So my question is, so how are you validating those AI-generated outputs? And what safeguards are you currently using to avoid what we call the black box evidence synthesis? So if you can give us more practical insight, what changes to the process, governance, validation practices have you put in place to safeguard and to validate these tools and outputs? Because as you said, we have a plethora of tools and platform. We are actually overwhelmed with that. But the question is, how can we effectively choose among those? How can we validate the outputs being produced through AI-enabled systems, and ultimately how to avoid the black box evidence synthesis?
Yes. There is the idea that it is impossible to check what is going on inside an AI model or agent-based solution. And this is not completely true. There are a lot of solutions that can help you to see what are the intermediary or interim steps that AI is taking to reach one specific outcome. And there is no magic to be sure that we are getting reliable results. We need a human checking what is going on. And this is basically what we're doing for everything that we're doing to create like a standardization of the clinical trials database. We are cleaning this database, for example, for 1 year. Look, we are for 1 year defining the strategies to clean a database. Why? Because exactly for every single step we are checking. So we have a gold standard, we are checking what AI is doing. We are able to identify hallucinations. And when we find hallucinations, we put guardrails to correct or to not create new data that doesn't exist. But basically we have the human in the loop during this entire process to be sure that every single step is producing results with a specific threshold of accuracy. There is no magic for this, and this is extremely laborious when you are developing. But once you have a system that was validated, that was checked, and you know that your pipeline is getting X, Y, and Z levels of accuracy, you can start relying more on the application of AI solutions for the specific problem that you are trying to address. But basically, we are using guardrails. We are evaluating the intermediary steps taken and the outcomes produced. So we're going to be able that at the end, when we have a horizon scanning highlighting that X, Y, and Z drugs are innovations for cancer, we can be sure that all the validation in the middle was done, and we can replicate and we can document, and someone starting from the same point that as we did can get the same results.
Thank you, Jan. And this is inspiring to see the depth of work you are doing to ensure and safeguard the quality and trust in the evidence products. And so building on that, Maria, from your experience implementing AI within Living Evidence project, which validation and governance practices would you say should become standard when it comes to AI integration in living evidence?
Well, sorry, Rasha.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
So I think we found that engaging the users of these tools and of the products is really essential to ensure there's a good understanding of what the tools can do. I think transparency is crucial, and the response we have had when engaging these communities in Destiny, the fact that the project is developing these tools with rigor, transparency, and responsibility at its core has definitely been crucial to build trust. I think by engaging with some of these people, especially those users that are less involved in the evidence synthesis production and more on kind of advising policy, it has been important that reputable organizations that have quite a lot of experience in this are behind these tools. So that has also been important in kind of building the trust, I guess.
No, thank you, Maria, for emphasizing this. Actually, it's often overlooked, this engagement of the end users and closing the loop between the evidence producers, the tool developers, and the end users is a critical component to provide that feedback and continuously improve. So before we open the floor for the audience question and answer, I just want to wrap up with so one word or sentence from each of the speakers. So in the next 2 to 3 years, what would you say is the single most important investment or capability to scale AI-enabled living evidence responsibly? If you have that magic wand, what would you change immediately? What's that one investment or capability that we really need? So Maria, Jan, Thiago? No?
Sorry, I was speaking on mute. My apologies.
Oh.
So if I have to pick one, I would say digital literacy. Why? The only way for us to prevent errors and to assure quality and the necessary robustness when we are using AI is to know how the solution works. If we know the details and combining this information with the expertise that each one of us has in terms of one specific area, we can be aware that, okay, something is not right. We need to change something because the results that I'm getting are not reflecting what needs to be reflected. But the only way to do this is to get involved with the AI, understand how they work, understand how can we implement solutions, implement how can we change, how AI is changing the way that we are working, because this is in my opinion, the pathway for us to prevent mistakes.
No, well said. And to prevent the automation divide that we are seeing within LMIC as well. Go over, Jan, please.
Sorry. Yeah, I would say effective data curation and human-in-the-loop processes. I think this is something that we haven't entirely cracked. How much human do we need in the loop? And also depending on the amount of curated data that we have, to be confident and also to make sure that we always have enough human curation. And I think these are very exciting research questions at the moment, because I think we obviously want to do as little as possible, that we need to do as much as required, that we in the end have data that we also in the future are confident about and doesn't spiral towards the bottom without us realizing.
Excellent, Jan. Maria, would you like to
just to perhaps
share your perspective?
Sure, just best practice and standards that are shared across the various communities, I think would be essential.
Great, excellent. Thank you all for the deep dive and for sharing your perspectives and insight. This has been quite interesting and helpful, and it shows we still have a long way ahead. It's an exciting journey, but we all need to collaborate together, share what's in. And we need collaboration, sharing to to be able to really harness AI in a responsible way. So I will now open the floor for audience Q&A. So please feel free to add your questions in the chat, or you can ask our panelists directly. So I'm not sure if there were previous questions that were posted earlier. No.
I don't think
Okay.
so.
Yeah. So to our audience, this is a very exciting, evolving terrain. Please share your questions. And there's no right or wrong question. So really, it's evolving. We are all learning together. So if you would like to share an insight as well, please do that, because I'm sure many of you are also pilot testing with different AI tools. So to what extent these resonated with our speakers. So feel free to share your thoughts, to ask questions, etc. So we have a question from Roberta in the chat. Should we send this? Oh, so so I'm assuming, Roberta, you're asking about the form. So yes, I think, Jan and Maria, would you like to answer that? So can the form be shared with other agents?
Yes, please. We're trying to have to collect as much information as possible. There's a team within Destiny looking into it, but any information you have around agentic AI tools that you know of or have used, please do share.
We have a question from Michelle. What is the sensitivity and specificity of the new tools compared to humans? Is that being measured?
There is not a single answer for your question, Michelle, depending on the problem that you're trying to address. Even when you have a human categorizing information, you don't have 100% accuracy. So for example, we are using AI-based solutions to standardize ICD codes and intervention codes at the database that WHO has regarding clinical trials. We are able to reach an accuracy of using AI of even 95%. And for the 5% that is missing, basically we don't have like a miscategorization, but just incomplete information. So that depends, depending of the problem that you are trying to address, the complexity of the data and how organized or not is the input that you are trying to work with. You may have different levels of accuracy, but it is possible to get human level performance with the tools that are currently available, depending of how you structure your problem.
Yeah, Ana Maria, feel free to add to that. So we have another question on, so I think we touched upon this earlier. So it's about the plethora of tools that keep changing so fast. So as soon as one is validated, new and better ones come, and then the validated ones become outdated. So how to deal with this plethora of tools and platforms around AI?
I mean, in our case, what we are planning to do, and this is really work that we haven't done yet, but we need just standardized evaluation pipelines and a platform for evaluation that runs a set of standard of a standard set of validations for new tools as they're coming out and are updated. So we need not only to do living evidence, we also need to do living validation and build infrastructures that facilitate us to do this very quickly, because with those things, you're quite right, we don't have the same amount of time as we had in the past, because otherwise it's kind of pointless, because who wants to know today about, you know, how well ChatGPT-3 can extract data?
Yeah, living validation.
Adding to this, it's a nightmare because at every 3 months, everything changes. So exactly as Jan highlighted, we need validation structures that are capable to adapt to the change. And this is what we are doing, for example, with this effort that we are currently developing for cleaning this clinical trials database. We changed approach in 1 year 4 times because we have a better solution, a better model capable to produce better results with less errors, we need to incorporate. There is no other way. So this living validation strategy is exactly what we're doing, and I think that is the solution for this fast-paced environment, and this will not change. I think that the trend is for the tools to be available in a shorter amount of time.
So we'll take the last two questions before we wrap up with the survey. So we have a question about the North-South divide and what is being undertaken within the different institutions and organizations you are working with to ensure development and accessibility and utility of AI is equitable between the Global South and the North so that we don't have that automation divide. And another question is, what do you think are the most exciting opportunities for higher education learners in the AI era? So I think this is more about the new generation of workforce. What are the new competencies that we should start thinking about?
I would start with the first question. I think that's a very good one, and obviously there are large inequities, and they won't go away like so easily, and obviously that if we want to address them, then we can only do this through dedicated political will to do so, and putting resources where they're currently not. One thing that I would say in the context of the evidence synthesis community, I think there is a glimmer of hope, at least that in the sense that the evidence synthesis infrastructure collaborative is very clear that this is a problem, and they are actively trying to devise resources, particularly to the Global South, to counterbalance this. But that said, we are all just, in terms of the real tech, they are, often in the hand of private companies. They are that are situated, a lot of them in the US, and we are all only users. But at this kind of smaller scale level of the evidence synthesis community, what it is doing, at least there's a glimmer of hope that there is at least an awareness of this, that is a problem, and there are also resources being put against it, which I think is important.
Thank you, Jan, for raising this point. And would any of the panelists want to add anything before we close up? Any final thought, reflection? Okay, then thank you all for the excellent insights. Thanks to the panelists, thanks to the audience for joining us. And just before you leave, please, if you can fill the evaluation form, it takes less than a minute, and it really helps us as co-chairs of the Alive Learning Forum to listen to your thoughts and to see how we can always improve to match the needs of our community. So the survey should appear on your screens